Thank God.
Thank God.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the September 8th meeting of the Town of Milton. We'll start with the pledge by Councilman Blaisdell.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brenda, can you call the roll, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Present.
Councilwoman Kerr. Present. Councilman Crowell.
Present.
Councilman Isakson.
Present.
Supervisor Zalati.
Present. We'll now move on to our first public comment session. If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Mr. Munter, this was the first one up.
First one. I just wanted
John,
to
you're going to have to turn it on and
turn it on right here.
You got it? Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify some things. Maybe all the council people, or maybe all of them know this, but I wanted to bring you up to date on this. As you know, as I was working on Boyhaven, I split up the property so that we now have a children's camp on 70 acres and a couple of lakes and all the critical buildings. The balance is tending to go to New York State, and they're going to close on this probably within the next couple of months. So in my negotiations with the state, they came in and did a logging plan, and we used a state forester to do the logging plan. And if anybody's been up there, we had a 6-page report. Bill Lewis certainly has the report. I don't know if anyone else does. But he treated 5 areas differently. The one around the Frink Cemetery was what we almost call a clear-cut zone. And this was clear-cut because the trees there were diseased, and he wanted those cut, and we had an agreement that we were going to leave a 20-foot border around everything that was cut to kind of just make it more acceptable to the community. We did this when the Frink Cemetery area was done. We left this 20-foot border to the west, which is naturally the prevailing wind direction. Shortly after that was cut, there were trees within our 20-foot border on my property that went on to the Frink Cemetery. I touched base with your historian and different people and said it's our responsibility to come in, remove these trees. And I talked to the state forester and said, I think when we remove them, we have to make a little different decision on the 20-foot border. Since it faces west, all these trees are now susceptible because they have no protection further west. He agreed, and we did that. And I also agreed to bring in a monument repairman that would repair the monuments we damaged. And it's not easy to find these people today. There's only 3 or 4 of them within a 3-state area that do this work. I went up this week and he finally finished repairing the monuments that I had damaged by the trees that fell from my property. it had been recently mowed, and I was very disappointed in the fact that the mowing does not pay attention to cemetery mowing. We have monuments there that are 170 years old, that are only, they're marble, 1.5 inches thick. When these things get bumped into by power moving mowers, they fall over and break. I went through the entire cemetery and I saw a lot of evidence of this. So I guess what I'm winding up at is I've done everything. In fact, my restoration on the monuments, the guy, you can't even tell they've been broken. So I'm very satisfied with my guy, but I think you need to give whoever does the mowing there some instruction on the fact that you can't go into an old cemetery and try to cut so close to the stones that you bang into them, because I saw 2 stones that 1.5 inches by 14-inch marble stones that had been broken in this recent mowing. So my message is I'm done with the responsibility I had, and if the town wants any additional repair done there, I'll be happy to hand you over the name and address of the individual that did my work. But at the same token, you should give some instruction to your people that mow that area that this is very sensitive. When you mow a cemetery, it's not like mowing something else. You can't run into these monuments that are 170 years old, that have already been deteriorated by acid rain, and expect them to stand up. So those are the 2 messages I'm sending. I think I've completed my work, and anyone, if the town historian is here tonight, or she can go over the thing, and I'm happy to discuss anything with her. We're done with my end of the thing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Leonard.
John O'Leary, SOA. I note on the agenda for this evening that there is no discussion on the old business regarding the outstanding $40,000 claim that the insurance company has denied. We'd like the town board to at least discuss on the old business how you're going to proceed on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. McGovern.
Good evening, and I'm glad we've eliminated that 3-minute comment period. It was 6.5 minutes for Mr. Munter. I'll only take 5. I bet you can't guess what I'm going to speak about tonight. At the last meeting, the board canceled the sewer rate hearing that was scheduled, and they attributed it to the refusal of the sewer company to answer questions truthfully under oath in support of their current rates. I guess that should tell you pretty much everything you need to know. The law, Transportation Corporation Law, requires that you have a rate hearing at least once every 5 years, and you're presently 4 years delinquent. We have continually appeared before this board for years, and that in and of itself is offensive. However, canceling a scheduled rate hearing is beyond comprehension. The basis of any connection rate is the cost of infrastructure installed by the sewer company and no one else, no other entity. The record before you, and I will give this all to Brenda and she can make copies for you. You can request copies, and it would be good for you to read it. The record is clear. It is supported by expert testimony and statements from the owners of the sewer company. Mr. Alex Kuchis, who's a certified public accountant, provided sworn affidavit that the sewer company has no investment in any infrastructure whatsoever. Mr. Ed Romanzo, who is also a certified public accountant, wrote to Mr. Joe Walsh, the sewer company's attorney, back in 2010, that all sewer infrastructure was installed and paid for by Deer Run Management, Inc. And that means all infrastructure was expensed, paid for upon the sale of the Deer Run subdivision. Thus, it had no book value. It did not ever appear on the sewer company's books because it had no value. And that's exactly what the sewer company has reported its entire existence to the Internal Revenue Service. Mr. Mitchell, as president of the sewer company in 2008, wrote to Gary Robinson that the sewer company has no capitalization. That means they have no investment. They're not taking depreciation because they have no investment. They have nothing to depreciate. And they're not entitled to or requesting a return on investment, which I wonder how they got a 7% return enacted by this board. And then he goes on to say, thus the financial concerns related to the cost of construction are totally irrelevant. On July of 2020, the sewer company's attorney, Joe Walsh, came up here, and we have the transcript, and testified that individuals, not the sewer company, built a system, and they did expense it. I don't know if you get that, but when you expense it, it's paid for. It's done. Thus, it's without question, there's been no basis, there is no basis for a connection rate, and the time has come for this to end. The law, which is Transportation Corporation law, is clear. You are free to consent to the transfer of this company to Saratoga County Sewer District. And in fact, Councilman Froelich asked for and received a letter sent to you, Mr. Supervisor, in March of this year, stating they are ready to accept such system as long as you correct some minor deficiencies. The one brilliant moment that you had back in 2011, you had the foresight, or your attorney had the foresight, to require that the sewer company, quote, keep the system in such a condition as to be acceptable to the board and county at all times. Thus, we respectfully request that this connection rate be eliminated and that the sewer monopoly that has existed here in the town of Milton for over 34 years come to an end. Because when given an opportunity to come and support their rate under oath, they ran in the opposite direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Anyone else? Bruce?
Thank you. I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight, and I did see that you'll be discussing the sewer situation, so I have some information I'd like to present to the board. Frank, if you could take one and pass them on. Thank you, sir. Please. Thank you. As soon as they get passed on, you'll see it's a rather simple bar graph that we are sharing with you once again. I think we provided this information previously. But it shows the investment in the sewer system and the amount of money that was made on that investment. I'll wait till everybody has a copy. Y'all have a copy? You missing one?
I got one.
We've got 5? Yeah, everybody's got one? Okay. So if you look on the chart, you'll see on the left bar, the smallest one, the investment the town says was made in the sewer system. That's approximately $1.1 million. The next bar to the right, you'll see the return on investment that the town has said in their resolution the sewer company is entitled to. And that return on investment totals approximately $1.9 million. The next bar, next higher bar, you'll see is the amount that the sewer company has, as of 2019, received in connection charges. So it may be a little more than this number now, but at that point in time, it was $2.9 million, which, if you do the math, is $1 million more than the town said they're entitled to. Then the last bar, which is the very tall bar, shows all of the return on investment as of 2019. And that's 2 years ago, so it's probably slightly higher now. That amount is approximately $5.3 million. This is all factual information. This information comes directly from the records of Heritage Springs Sewer Works, from the Saratoga County Clerk's Office records, and from the sworn affidavit of a CPA. We know it is factual because when Heritage Springs was given the opportunity to refute this information by telling the truth under sworn testimony, they flatly refused to tell the truth under oath. I should tell everything to this board, everything you need to know by the actions of the sewer company. They're great at words. I think the last document was 150-some pages, but actions sure do speak louder than words. Mr. Supervisor, it is time that you stop protecting your friends in the sewer company and put the public interest of your constituents ahead of your friendship with the folks at Heritage Springs Sewer Works. This board knows what to do. Regardless of the supervisor's agenda of protecting his friends at the sewer company, at the expense of the taxpayers, you know what to do. And it's time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mikado. I'm asking you. Yep, go ahead.
A few meetings back, it was on one of the topics was the decals for the trucks. And I guess nobody would second it. I don't know how this came about, but I think it's wrong. We spent a lot of money on these vehicles so the workers could do their job if they need these vehicles. I don't know what it takes to get a decal on. You have to get Dave Forbes in the room or Jason in the room. But how hard can it be for someone to sit down with, I guess, DPW, it's their trucks, both of them, and pick out a decal and put it on? I never knew they had all these vehicles until I keep seeing the license plates. But I think the taxpayers would be surprised and happy to see where the taxpayers' money is going on these vehicles to keep our streets clean and the workers, you know, doing their job. So maybe we can get whoever needs to be in the room and get these decals put out once and for all. You know, I'm going to use a saying now from Larry, the cable guy, get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will close the opening public comment session. Next up will be a representative from MJ to go over the information that we received last week on the bids. Jenny, come up for a couple of minutes, please.
You hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good evening, Supervisor
You
Board.
can take that up.
Thank you.
I'm Jenny Whitman.
From MJ Engineering. As the board knows, the town did open bids last week for the interior renovations to Town Hall, which was a second phase of work to bring the building back into conformance with building codes to allow the building to be reoccupied. We did open 4 bids for construction contract, electrical contract, plumbing contract, and HVAC contract. And I'm happy to report that the bids did come in below the estimate, which was great news. And I did speak to each of the bidders, and everybody is comfortable with their bids. So from a bid perspective, the results were very good. Just to give you a little bit of additional background as to how we got to the place that we are at today. As everybody on the board knows, the building was vacated in March of 2020, at which point the town did request that MJ Engineering assist in a program study to evaluate options for town hall. In June 2020, MJ Engineering began that study where we evaluated two different options. One was to just replace the building in kind, which essentially was to replace the roof, mitigate the mold, repair interior ceiling tiles, replace carpeting, do some exterior drainage work. That was option number one, which we had estimated at that time to be $725,000. And we also presented a second option, which would be to basically do a gut renovation of the building, rearrange the walls, obviously replace the roof, because we all, that was obviously the trigger for the entire project to begin with. And to do a significant rehab of the interior space, replace mechanical, plumbing, electrical systems to again bring them into conformance with current codes and energy efficiency standards. And that estimate was approximately $2.4 million. At the time, it was decided that the most efficient way to get the town back into the building and to obviously evacuate this space, which has been used temporarily for over a year now, it was decided that the best course of action would be to move forward with option one, which again was just to repair the roof system and the damaged materials to reoccupy the building. Later in in August of that year, MJ was awarded the contract to complete design documents and put a contract out to bid for the roof replacement and again the interior renovations to the building so that the town could again reoccupy the space. We did go out to bid in December 2020 on schedule with that bid package, and we did open up bids at that time, which again came in below our estimate. We had estimated the project, which let me back up just a little bit. While we were out to bid, we did end up de-scoping the interior renovations component of the project because of water damage that was observed. So we did revise the estimate of the final bid package that was opened. And our estimate was approximately $550,000. So when we did open up the bids again came in below our estimate at about $464,000. And that work included, again, the replacement to the roof, an entire new roofing system, completely new sheathing, mold remediation, some insulation. It included an entirely new drainage system on the exterior of the building to help alleviate water intrusion into the basement walls, and some other miscellaneous improvements. That project is now essentially complete. It did was completed within budget. In fact, there should be a small credit coming back to the town for unused portions of that contract. While that project was out, or was under construction, we did go out to bid with phase two, which was intended to repair interior ceilings, provide some additional insulation, repair flooring systems throughout the building. But because of the water damage that was observed during the work of the roofing project, we were authorized to do a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing assessment to evaluate additional damage that may have resulted from water damage while the building was unoccupied. It was during this evaluation that we identified some building code items that would have required to be rectified before staff could reoccupy the building. And then we also made some additional recommendations, such as replacing aging furnaces to bring them into current compliance with energy standards, replacing your condensing units, which were, had exceeded their useful life, and several other components of building systems were recommended at the time. And this board did authorize us to proceed with that design, which was also included in the bid documents. So the bid package that was put out in August did include a significant amount of additional work from the originally bid project a year ago to not only address the materials in the building that were damaged by roof leaking, or roof leaks, but also to make it a more efficient and effective space for your staff. Again, including your mechanical, your ventilation systems, repairs to your restrooms, ADA compliance items that were out of conformance, we're now bringing into conformance. There's additional fire alarm system upgrades, many other pieces are included in this bid package, which is why, just to summarize, why the project went from a $750,000 construction project, which was estimated a year ago and was only a roofing project, but to about a $1.4 million construction project now. So again, the bids that we did put out in August did come in below our estimate, which again, we thought was a very good place for the town to be. It was a great bidding climate. So if there was ever a time to do this work, it's definitely now. And so we would encourage the board to consider those bids and to award them, to move the project forward and to reoccupy the space.
Thank you. Does anybody from the board have any questions?
Just a couple of quick ones. I don't want to leave.
Yeah, we can do that.
Not that I want to keep you all night, Jenny.
Sure, yeah, no, I'm here, no problem.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When we look at the bids, and we had some adults,
That's right.
if we want to reduce anything, those are the only two things that we can reduce?
Okay, so, the project was put out to bid with 2 ad alternates.
Yes.
The first ad alternate was to do a new sewer system connection, which would take the building off of the aging septic systems that are there currently, that are not there per current design standards, and connect into the public sewer system. That was ad alternate 1. Ad alternate 2 was to install a access control system, which would provide card key access to the building for your employees, and add some security system components to that. Those are in addition to the base bid that was put out. So, for example, the construction contract, the base bid was $212,000. The sewer system ad alternate was about $113,000, which would be in addition to that base bid, which is just your interior renovation work that I discussed previously, and then there was work for ad alternate 2 as well. So right now, without rebidding the project, the only way to minimize the project cost would be to not award ad alternate 1 or ad alternate 2. That's correct. In order to reduce the cost of the project further, we have to rebid the project.
We can do it now, so we don't have to keep Jenny on.
Well, I ran some numbers today trying to figure this whole thing out. And if you bear with me for a minute, I'll tell you my reason. I think today we've spent right around $617,000. Your numbers are lagging a little behind the controllers.
Yeah, my numbers also didn't include any out of pocket.
That's right. It didn't include acquiring the bond or anything like that. That would have been phase 1, basically. The bids for phase 2 were taken out of the original bid and was estimated, was not estimated or included in the $1 million bond. So when I looked at it and I said, well, if we just did what we had originally scoped to do, that was to remove the mold, do the seat roof, and rebuild to get back in there. That was really what the $1 million bond was all.
Correct. You would have been absolutely so within that original.
Yeah, and what I did is I looked at our bids, low bids, and I added them up. They came to about $588,000, give or take.
Yep.
And I said, well, how do you divide it up so you can get some idea of what it's all worth? When I looked at it, I said, well, let's take the original bid, the build back. And I attributed about 40% of this build back that we bid now to that project.
That's probably a fair assessment.
Yep. And when I looked at it, that means our total cost for the $1 million bond came to like $880,000, which is still under our budget. So when people say, well, you're over budget, we really weren't. Then when we look at our next problem, which was the frozen pipes, which really affected the scope of the work, I said, well, out of that money we bid out now to 588, I attributed about 25%.
And I think that's your phone.
Your cell phone's never responsible for the system.
No? Okay, maybe not.
I said 25% because we have a much less square footage and a lot less work, to be honest with you, than we did phase one.
I think I
To build
follow where
back,
you're
we
saying,
were
yeah.
looking at ceilings, floors, not upgrades, but just the ceilings and floors.
That's-
So if we looked at that total, including the 40,000 we had already spent to quick response, comes to about $210,000. So that's one decision we need to make. Then the third thing I looked at was the mechanical problems we discovered when we did the original year review of all the mechanical systems. And when I looked at that, we could have actually had that done in our original request with your people because that was in it and we took it out. So that would have saved time. But when I look at that now, that total comes to about $409,000 as far as replacing furnaces, IT systems, phone systems that hadn't been working. Basically everything we needed, as long as all the ceilings were out of place. It made more sense to go in now and do this type of thing.
Just to follow up with that statement, when we had done the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing assessment earlier this year, back in March, we had estimated the recommended improvements to be construction costs only $385,000.
So we're
Your
right.
bid amounts for those 3 contracts total just less than that.
Yes.
So, again, that's where we actually have given you more in those bid documents to include IT systems and things of that nature as well.
Where I added in the sewer hookup and the
Okay, yeah.
lock system, security system. So when I look at all this amount that we're looking at, I really look at 1.5. Maybe. And don't hold me to these figures because I'm pretty crude when I do these
Yeah, I
things.
come up with very similar figures. Mine don't include the first response costs and any kind of bond costs. But in terms of construction and engineering fees, I had about 1.4. So
Our biggest problem now that we have this problem, how do we pay for it? I really looked at funding sources that I think we can look at. Number one would be, in 2020, we had an excess of about $390,000. So that's one source. Second source is all the solar projects in the town had to give money to the town. And that really is going to amount to just under or over $300,000. That's already approved projects, ready to go. This is what they got to put up before they draw permits. Thirdly, we also have unallocated reserve funds and contingency funds for 2021. The very last option would be to raise the bond, which I'm totally against. I don't see, when we have these other monies sitting here, why we would ever bond more and pay interest for money we already have. But I guess when we look at it, we either have to approve everything with the exception of doing the sewer hookup and lock system, or we have to shelve this and go back up to bid, reducing this whole scope of work.
And the only thing that I'd like to caution the board against is the fact that you do have to put a contract out to bid to be able to reoccupy the space. We have spoken on a couple of occasions about options to reduce the scope, and there are very, very few options. And that's really why we pulled apart at alternate 1 and at alternate 2. those were the two largest pieces of the project that we felt the town could live without. Most of the other work identified in this scope for all three contracts is either absolutely required by code or it's required for the effectiveness of your staff, such as the IT improvements and things that have been identified in the project.
Well, for our residents too.
And your
They fall on the
residents.
phone and they can't get anything.
Right.
That's the problem.
So I
That's
do
what's
caution the board about rebidding the project for not only that, because I don't know what we could pull out to really see any kind of reduction in the bids that we received, but also because the bids that we received were highly competitive. This was a fabulous bid season for you to actually go out to bid in, and the timing couldn't have been better, and you had 5 or 6 or 7 bids for each of the contracts, which was actually unheard of for a plumbing type of contract with such a small scope. So we know that the bids were competitive, they're great numbers. You know, the risk of rebidding it is you could see the price actually go up, even with pulling scope out of the project. That's a large risk to take, plus additional time and, you know, engineering fees and things like that to go back out to it.
I guess when we look at this project, where do we want to head?
So where do we want to go?
Where do we want to head with this project? I don't know if we're ready tonight to make a decision on awarding contract.
We have time to
Yes.
go over that. You still have to come through with your
Yeah,
recommendations,
and
right?
we haven't drafted the resolutions yet, which we weren't expecting the board to act on those tonight. We would definitely draft those resolutions, and it was our decision that you would probably award the project at the next board meeting on the 22nd. Which is still consistent with the schedule that I prepared for you back in May.
I think we can take a week and go over what our options are. I've spoken to David a little bit about it over the last couple of days, as have you, to figure out where this funding can come from. But I think what we talked about earlier, John, was this is what needed to be done. And these are the costs, and we do have the funds available all across several avenues to take care of this building, which was needed to be repaired. And like you said before, with the ceilings down and the ceiling tiles gone and the roof being repaired, this is the right time to go in to have the building, have the IT upgrades and the new fire alarm system put in, because it's just easier to do it without the ceiling tiles and the grids up there. It's just much easier to do it at this time.
John, I appreciate you putting all these numbers together. Got a little confusing for me. There was a lot of if we had, and we didn't. That's the problem. So we're coming down to $1.4 million. And I did speak to Dave, and there's still some other outstanding costs that are not included in this bid. One being the upgrade in the courtroom. There's costs there that he didn't have, and I'm not realizing he didn't have when this is our controller. And there's something else I'm concerned about, is the trailer rental. Is that going to be included in the cost of, this isn't a question for Jen, but the board, I guess, is that included in the project? It has to be. We're paying, what, $1,000, $1,200 a month for that? So the question I was going to ask Jen, once we get into this, is there any way we can get our highway back into their area quickly? So,
It's possible, just like with the roof project, we didn't build anything into the contract specifications that would require the contract to do that first. We still do have a substantial completion date built into the contract. I believe it's December 23rd. However, because the scope of work is pretty limited in that highway area, it's very likely that we could ask the contractor to say, hey, get this first. And as soon as it's ready to turn over, we can do that. We did that with the roof project. Again, we didn't have anything contractually to hold them to that, but it worked out well, and they were able to hit those milestones. So I think that's definitely something we can work out with the contractor, because the scope, again, is ceiling tiles in there, it's lighting, showers.
I believe the showers are the biggest
Showers are the
chunk of
biggest
that.
thing, but maybe that can happen while they're occupying the space. It's possible. We could work some things out to try to expedite that staff.
Ceiling tiles and the lights we have.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of labor.
Yeah, and there's really no
We don't have to wait on materials.
lead items there.
Just to give you an idea, that's how I came to 1.5 instead of 1.4. Because we had spent some money already in the board.
Right, I don't think,
Who has-
Dave, I don't think it's totally accounted for. I don't think he has it on the books yet, so.
Numbers.
He said there were some other things that were still outstanding. Okay, my other concern is the water coming up through the conduit, it's still coming.
Yeah.
And that's gotta be addressed, it's coming through our electrical system.
So that's something that we do believe is a pre-existing condition that's been exacerbated by the work of the project. That is being addressed by the contractor. I meant to get an update for you today from them just to see what their time was. I wasn't able to get one today. But that will be addressed to extend that 1 liter into the stormwater system. But there is some more things going on there that are unrelated to the project. I do have a suspicion that there's leaks in that conduit that have been there for a long time, because there is rust, significant amount of rust in that electrical closet. So therefore, we would want to do some additional, like, soft dig investigations just to make sure nothing else is going on. But the water that is there from the downspout, I think, is making the situation worse, which we will rectify.
Some of the disruption was digging along the building possibly too.
There was no digging along the building in that location. It was only on the 2 story.
Yeah, I think that conduit.
Too far out.
Bar has already been broken.
Oh, I think, but yeah, but
It's broke someplace underground. We need to dig it up, basically.
Yeah.
Figure out where
it's
the
gotta be
break
done.
is.
Well, that's my issue, it's gotta be done. That's the
Fix it.
main feed for our electrical for the whole building. We have it sitting in a conduit full of water that's coming up onto the floor. So it's gotta be addressed. Somebody's gotta get out there and dig it up and see what's going on.
And it isn't, that's a fairly easy thing.
Well,
Yeah, it needs to be handed out just because
It's been a month and a half, so let's get
Probably
it
only less
done.
than 2 feet.
It does run up the slab.
I did send an email.
Yeah, and we've asked the contractor to get to it. I'm not sure what we'd like us to do, or
I'd like you to hire somebody to get to it and charge it against the contractor if that's the
The
case.
contractor's only gonna fix the rain spout. He's not gonna fix the conduit.
That's correct.
You're gonna have to get Pritchard or somebody else in here, your electrician, to come in and actually dig up the conduit, look at it, and give you an idea of the repair. It's a little difficult, but it can be done because the conduit, as it runs into the building, it runs under the slabs for a little ways
Correct.
and up in. If they do find a crack, it can always be disconnected out of the panel, pulled back, and rerouted up the exterior of the wall.
Yeah.
It's gotta be a pretty big
Which would involve-
crack or broken, because every time it rains now,
And it's
they have
happened
water
for a long
coming out.
time.
Huh?
It's happened for a long time.
this hasn't just started in the last, 6 weeks here.
I don't know, it's the first the judges ever mentioned it.
Well,
That he had
it
to
was-
clean up
I
his
said,
carpet.
yeah, it wasn't necessarily as bad as this. I think the roof drain made it worse.
Okay, well, let's,
When I looked at the,
let's just get to it. How's that?
when I looked at the ground wire, which is fairly corroded, that's been going on.
Yeah, and the conduit.
I just make a decision what we're gonna do and where the money's coming from. Because I'm with you, I won't vote to bond it.
We'll sit down with David tomorrow, John, if you're available, and we'll go over where this funding can come from. Anybody have any other questions for Jane? I think we're good, thank you, Jen.
Do you want me to stay?
I think we're good, thank you. Next up is Resolution 44, approving Cam Crest at a cost of $10,605 for the purchase and installation of audio-visual equipment. Whereas the controller and the town clerk have advised the town board that it is necessary to upgrade the town's AV equipment in order to properly and correctly hold virtual meetings on Zoom and/or other platforms, and to correct the issues the town and the public are currently experiencing with sound visibility during the town's various meetings. Be it resolved that the town supervisor is hereby authorized to expend the sum of $10,605 in order to pay for the purchase and installation of AV equipment as stated from Camcrest 210 East 47th Street, Unit 11C, New York, New York, 10017. A copy of which RFP is attached here too, and to do all things necessary and sign all documents required in order to effectuate same. It is further resolved that the said amount is to be funded from the 2021 ARPA funding or as otherwise determined by the controller, and the town controller is authorized to make the necessary budget transfers needed for the purchase. Therefore, be it resolved by the town board of the town of Milton. Need someone to make a motion, approve this move on this resolution.
Can we have a brief discussion first?
Sure.
So, there's been recent discussion about where it would be installed, who would be installing it. So when I spoke to this potential vendor, it was a one-time setup. So there's no delivery of the equipment. So I think the expectation, at least from them, when I spoke to them, is everything would be delivered and installed at town hall. So if we want any of the equipment here, we're gonna have to determine if they're able to do that by just shipping the poly unit here and then coming up at a later date to install the visual devices at town hall. And then if we would need them a third time when we're completed here, community center, to reinstall the poly unit at town hall. So it's potentially 3 visits. And that would not be covered, from my understanding, it's a one-time visit, so that would not be covered under the $10,605 amount.
Do you have a sum of what it would be for another visit?
I do not. They said they would be able to come back again, and additionally, there's other work they're willing to do if we don't have an IT resource available, which I believe we have a contractor, we just have to ensure they're available. So the number would go up. And if that's the case, would that work be able to be covered by the ARPA funding?
I believe it would be, due to the fact that it's, an improvement to the audio-visual ability for the residents and the town to communicate through not being in the same room. And we have 21 people tonight on Zoom watching, so I think with a better system, we might have even more people interested in watching the meetings.
Okay. So I guess my recommendation would be if we feel that there's value to have it installed here, we determine this to be the delivery and setup address, and then we inquire what their cost would be to come back for a second visit in either December or early January. We would have it set up at an additional cost.
Okay, I think setting it up here for October, November, December is probably a good move. And we can check with Jeff and see what those
I
costs are.
haven't heard that many complaints. I know once in a while we have glitches. Anybody ever?
No.
No.
There you go.
Turn it on.
It is on. It is on.
Nope.
No, oh, no.
Where's the batteries?
Here, talk about.
Do we have that many complaints? I know once in a while there is a glitch where you can't hear it and we'll start getting all kinds of text messages. I guess we gotta find out what, I'm all in favor of this. I wanted this in our, especially for our planning and zoning board meetings. I think it'd be great for everybody to be able to see what they're talking about instead of a paper map up on the board. But what's it gonna cost for these extra visits? And if we don't get it delivered until December, whenever we can put it into our town hall, is the price gonna hold and the charges for the setup gonna hold, you know? Make sure things like that, right? I mean, we wouldn't be putting the screens up here, correct? We'd just be putting
I don't think
audio
there's any way
type.
you could.
No, we couldn't put the screens up here.
Yeah, so, are these TVs, are they flat screen TVs? Okay.
They're flat screens, yes.
4K.
And I know a lot of people who just go to Judy's site and watch the meeting and wish it was up sooner than 3 or 4 days, but they can wait.
You know, you slip her 20 or so, and she might get it up sooner. Right now, she does it for nothing.
No, but I mean, I do know a lot of people that'll call me and say, you know, I watched the meeting. So, I don't know, just,
I guess to have it for 3 months to me is kind of a waste of money.
Okay, can we'll just lock this in?
I think what you can do is sign your contract and pay for the equipment. That can be stored on site. And that is the biggest part of that.
So they don't ship any of the equipment?
Bring it up.
They pack it in their vehicle and come up
So
here?
either they store it for us, I guess basically put it.
So we're gonna, well, then we could just approve this resolution, sign the contract, and give them a date for installation. Is everybody okay with that?
We have to be certain that everything is in place at town hall before they come. Because if there's any wires that they need to run, any connections, they're not electricians, so they can't run outlets, but they can run Ethernet cords or connect to the VoIP system. So we have to ensure that all that's completed before they.
Well, we will make sure they get in contact with whoever's doing our electrical work up there, and if they need extra outlets or wiring, we'll make sure that it's ready. They can give us a list of their requirements.
And if I could just add to that, if you're not rushing to put it in this building and your desire is just to get it and have it for the next building, why don't we call our IT guy and have him talk with them to see if he can even do some of that work? And he can coordinate with them this whole, who's going to store it and who's going to put it in and when. I don't want to sign a contract, pay the money, and then hope to get it someday, and the company goes out of business and disappears. It seems we should get those answers before we commit. And again, if there's no rush to put it in this particular building, then let's wait for 2 weeks and get those answers before you vote.
Okay, will you have time over the next 2 weeks, Ryan, to make those connections and calls?
Absolutely.
Just to give you an idea, in our phase 2, IT improvements, all those hookups are in the city.
Right.
The Cat 6 cable, whatever they need to hook up the screens, because they already had them in the house. So there shouldn't have really involved anything with these guys. That all works and stuff.
So we're gonna table this for 2 weeks? Ryan, and you'll come back with the details of the hookups and the lock.
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Resolution 45, whereas due to the increase in natural gas costs and the expiration on August 31st of the town's current supply contract for gas supply, the town board plans to award a new contract to the lowest responsible bidder for the town's gas supplier and for town properties. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board does hereby authorize, agree, consent to, and ratify allowing the supervisor entering into an agreement to provide natural gas services to town buildings with, and this is what's up for discussion, is our rates and who to go to. But in no event higher than the current rate paid by the town. And further hereby authorizes the town supervisor to sign and enter into an agreement as such and execute all necessary documents and pay all amounts required thereunder in furtherance of such. So David has given you his recommendations, and his recommendation is to go with Plymouth Rock Energy for a 39-month contract at a price of .377. You need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Can you get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, so filling in the blanks, we're going to go with Plymouth Rock for a fixed term of 39 months at a rate of .37710. Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurd.
Yes,
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Osowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Thank you. Next up is Resolution 46, whereas the town board of the town of Milton must make budgetary adjustments and said amendments must be based upon resolutions of the town of Milton. And now therefore be it resolved, the town board of Milton does authorize the fiscal officer of the town of Milton to make amendments to the 2021 budget and process interbudgetary transfers as follows. from B8-7-2021, from AA-0688-000-000, other liabilities, $12,605, to AA-1010-200-000, legislative board equipment and capital outlay, $12,605. This is for the purchase and installation of the previously mentioned audio-visual equipment.
Should this be tabled until the next meeting? After the discussions are in?
Yeah.
Yep. Next up, Resolution 47, approving BST for the 2020 and 2021 audits. Whereas the town of Milton is required to provide annual audits for each fiscal year, and whereas the town controller has recommended and the town board is desirous of hiring BST and Company CPAs LLP, whom the town has used in prior years to perform audits for the years 2020 and 2021. Now therefore be it resolved, the town board hereby awards and hires BST and Company to perform the audits for the years 2020 and 2021 at a cost not to exceed the sum of $19,000 for 2020 and $19,750 for 2021. So the sum for 2 years would be $38,750.
I did last.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurd.
Yes,
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalat.
Yes. Next up is a motion to set a public hearing for local law 4 of 2021, adding chapter 133, unsafe abandoned properties and structures law. Bill has worked very hard with our attorneys to write up law for what is beginning to be a problem, and I guess they're called zombie properties. So we've all had it, well, we have this in front of us. We'll set a public hearing for the local law. Bill has told me there's probably about a half a dozen properties that would fall into this category starting tomorrow. So I think it's something we need to look at and take care of. What would the date be for the public hearing? 10 days, right? You have to give notice for 10 days?
Yeah, so the next meeting.
Next meeting, okay.
Sorry,
That's all right. So I need a motion to set the 22nd for a public hearing on our zombie home law. Time, 7:35.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
who's second?
I think Frank.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurd.
yes,
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalat.
Yes. Next up is a motion to approve the Friends of Caterhorse to use town roads on Sunday, September 18th, 2021, from 8 to 1 for their annual pedal to creek. They've done this for the past couple of years. They've turned in their insurance forms.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hurd.
yes,
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalat.
Yes. Next up is a motion to forward a request for a speed limit reduction on Paisley Road from Mark McCartney, 59 Paisley Road. To the Town of Milton Board, I am requesting that a speed limit reduction be done on the south end of Paisley Road. It is 55 miles an hour, and that is way too fast for this road. I worked for the Saratoga County Highway Department for 30 years. My last 9 years, I was one of the foremen. I know how this request works. Back in the 80s, I had a petition signed by other people on this section of the road. I presented it to the board. It did go to the county DPW and then to the state DOT. There was never a study done because that would involve putting traffic counters down, and they didn't. I have a copy of the letter the state sent back. It said there was no use lowering the speed limit because people wouldn't pay attention to it. What a thing to say. Over 30 years later, traffic has way more than doubled, more heavy truck traffic also. Some motorcycles go through here in excess of 80 miles an hour. I know because I ride also. I have a grandson I would like to take for walks, but I can't. The speeds are too fast, and with no blacktop shoulder, just a rubble shoulder that is only 2 or 3 feet off the blacktop. This has also become a bicycle route over the past few years, and I'm surprised that one of them hasn't been killed yet. But that is what it usually takes for something to be done. I've seen it on the news before. I would also like to know how Burston Road is now 40 miles an hour. There were no traffic counters put down. If they were, it was only for a day or two, which would be useless. Please do something. I am one of many that feel that way. I am more than willing to talk about it. Thank you, Mark McCartney, 59 Paisley Road. So I've checked with the county, and the next step in this process is for us to forward a request for a speed limit reduction on Paisley Road to the Saratoga County DPW. It'll come on town letterhead. I just need a motion for us to forward that speed limit reduction request.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Brendan, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Next up is a motion to appoint Sally Voldinsky to the Open Space Committee.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Frank.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion? Brendan, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Okay, under old business, we have a discussion on the Heritage Springs Sewer Works. I've been in contact with Joel Bianchi. He let me know this afternoon that he dropped the ball on the work that they're supposed to be doing, so he will send me a proposal tomorrow for the work that they have to do on the costs of maintenance, not maintenance, operations of the sewer district. Anybody have anything else, John?
Yeah, I guess, and I brought up that I think we need to start having discussions about this. I was looking over my paperwork, and I do have a few questions I would like Heritage to answer. And basically my questions are, I'm taking out of the 2019 report that Heritage supplied us, and December 31st, 2019 report that Heritage supplied us. When I look at their operating costs, they list out management fees, but they don't really say who the management is. And the second thing, if you go down, they have engineering fees, but they don't really tell us what the engineering fees were used for. And I do realize that the engineering fees are actually paid back to environmental design, but I think it would be important that every year they have so much in engineering fees, what it was actually used for, what they needed that engineering for. When I look at this whole rate review, and I look at where we started and where we have gotten to, I have really, and I don't want to say strong feelings, but I have feelings, and I'll tell you my reasoning, I guess. My reasoning really starts with their original contract, and it wasn't really a contract agreement with Saratoga County, the town of Milton back in 1988, whereby they agreed to put in the sewer system. The county agreed to let them run it for 5 years to recoup some or all of their costs. At the end of 5 years, it should have been basically turned over to the county.
County extended.
Yeah, which didn't happen because, I gotta say, the county was lazy, and they just kept extending it because it was convenient. So then we fast forward to 2011, when this really got blown out. And there again, we have an agreement between the town, the county, and Goshen's, Heritage Springs, that when I looked at it, doesn't really answer a lot of questions. And one of the biggest questions that's been raised, and I've raised it, is they were allotted 7% return on investment. But nowhere's in that agreement does it say return on investment from the original 1988, return on investment from 2011. It doesn't say. So when I looked at even their own report and their accountants, he lists out the assumption he makes for some of his findings. Well, his assumption is that they go back to 1988 and they get 7% on 700,000 to start with. And then when they have 300,000, they get 7% on a million. If you go by that reasoning, and I add up the numbers, they will never recoup the original cost because they will never make enough money in hookup fees to do that. And that couldn't have been the intent of all this. I'm amazed that we went from 1988 to 2011 and there is absolutely no interest of interest. It only became in 2011 when this interest got brought forth and now we had to set a percentage on it. So in my thinking, when I looked at it, I said, well, I would take the 2011 interest rate from 2011 and bring it forward. And if you add up those numbers, between 2011 and 2000, when I did this, 2011 up to the present, that's about $640,000 at 7% on 1 point. The town and Heritage and everybody agreed to it was 1.1 million. Well, when I add up those numbers and I add up all the hookup fees, they've taken in hookup fees between 1988 and 2019, 1.7 million. Well, when I add the 1.1 million and the 640, they've recouped their cost. When I looked at their, and I actually am looking at Heritage's original intent, why did they even get in the sewer business? They got in the sewer business because they wanted to build a townhouse. And it didn't have sewer, so they said, well, we'll put in this sewer system. And that's why the county agreed, well, you fund and put in this sewer system, but you can recoup some of your costs, but you don't get it all, or you may get it all, depending on how many units you sell. And you turn it over to us, and they agreed to all that. So at this point in time, when I look at all these numbers, I think it's time that we have to look at what is in the best interest. And I'm a little confused when I looked at their number of people that they have as customers. They list out 1,700 now, which I thought was more than that. But I went with their 1,700 amount of customers. And if you took out the $50 that the county surcharge that the county would charge if we went to the county, they would still end up paying $170 a year to 1,700 people right now. So every year that we keep going forward with the sewer company, they are taking in $289,000 or $290,000 of those 1,700 people. I don't think that at this point is fair to these people. So I think at this point, when I look at it, we need to look at certainly the hookup charges, because the hookup charges were only meant to be to recoup the money that they had invested. And we need to, and that's why I want to see on the rates that they're charging. It's very difficult with their reports because they list out rates, and I'll give them some things like electricity and those types of things because they stay pretty equal year to year. So they are making essentially some sort of profit off the rates in a roundabout way. And I believe that it's time to get this to the county. It will save these 1,700 residents certainly some money. It will end a lot of problems we've had in this town. It will certainly probably help with development. And I hold people to what they agree upon. And they agreed upon to turn this over to the county. And that's where I stand on it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Should they include employees and stuff? Employees, you should include employees in that?
As far as,
They're employees,
yeah, that's a separate line.
okay.
And that's what MJ is going to look into, is the expenses of running that type of business. So Joe's going to look at those numbers and get it back to us. Just let us know what he thinks about this, where that fits in. Next up is a discussion or old business about the helicopters. I met with Sharon Licata, her husband Anthony, Councilwoman Kerr, and Mr. Burton last week about the noise and the problems with the helicopters. I also spoke today to Matt Veach from Buildings and Grounds. He's the chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Sharon, you and your group, that's probably the wrong term, but you guys have foiled the county for contracts.
Yes.
And the county attorney said he is still looking into the legality of turning those contracts over, because there's some consideration that the contracts are between the helicopter company and North American, which the county doesn't have any oversight on. So they're not sure they can give us the contracts. That's the answer I got from Matt today. I wanted to let you know what he told me, and he said he would start bugging Mike Hartnett and Chad to see if there's anything that they can get. That's what he told me. That's all I know about that.
Should I foil for North American's contract? Because that's with the county, am I right?
North American's contract is with the county, yes.
County somewhere.
The county has a contract with North American.
So what do you recommend we do?
I would foil for that contract
Okay.
between North American and the county.
They're the FPO, and I know that they have the right to
And we
hire
get a
a
contract where they have the right to sublet.
They have the right to sell that.
Yes, they do have
But
the
they
right
don't
to
have the
sublet.
right to put our neighborhood in danger. They don't have the right to. That's-
And we had that discussion last week.
yeah, Thank you.
One more thing under old business is the ambulance corps. Ray, like I said, paid for his own study, and he came in exactly the numbers that we had, which was $200,000, 240, something like that. Our guy was 240, and Ray's guy was 200,000. Ryan had a couple of questions about the park and ride. I contacted CDTA today. They still make 4 pickups in the morning and 4 deliveries in the afternoon. Over the last 18 months, ridership has dwindled down to, they are down to 1 or 2 people a day riding the bus. They figure between COVID and being able to work from home, that's why the ridership has dwindled. I'm not even sure it's profitable to ride a bus to Albany for 1 person, but that's what they have to do. So I will contact, Jim and I are gonna get together tomorrow to see if we can dig up our contracts, Ryan, to answer those questions about what we can and can't do with that area of the parking lot. And then we can move on to determining the price for the ambulance corps, to purchase that 2 acre section and get started on the ambulance building that I think we all agree we need. So we'll take care of that tomorrow. I think we've already had our discussion on town hall bids. John, you think so? All right. Does anybody else have anything under old or new business?
Quick question, where do we stand on the noise stuff?
On the noise study, I've tried to stay as far away from it as possible, but, no, I'm gonna finish.
Microphone.
Yeah, okay. I haven't been, hands-on involved in it. The last time I spoke to him, I think he's probably putting together his report. We're pretty close to that point. Because I didn't want to, I didn't want to know when he was doing it, where he was doing it, and then we couldn't be accused of letting any information out, so, it was done properly. Okay?
Okay, moving on, we will have our ending public comment session. Anybody would like to speak? Mr. Munter.
Yeah. I may as well be first again.
3 minutes, sir, 3 minutes.
I will be. I was told by Tom I ran way over. Thank you. First, when you're talking about the bids, I know nothing about them. I only have 2 comments. One, when you're trying to find money to finish this project, one of the concerns we've had, not only in Milton and Greenfield, is this analysis of what it costs to renovate a solar field after it's gone out of business. We all hope that these things don't go out of business, but when the town takes a cost and that gets projected over 20 years, the analysis we've done as contractors states you couldn't possibly remove any one of these solar fields for the cost that you're immediately getting. Not to mention what the value of this money will be 20 years from now, even with 0.3% interest. So, John mentioned he's looking at ways, naturally, you've got to look at different ways to get out of this slump you're in with the building right now. But please don't tap into these resources, which are really under financed right now, because the guys sitting in these seats 20 years from now are going to be in big trouble. Not the guys sitting in the seats, but all the residents that have to pick up these costs to result in a bad decision made 20 years earlier. The only other comment I have is it's still difficult for me to see how we can go out on a contract to renovate our town hall without having a complete contract. Again, in our business, if we have a customer coming to us, he wants to know what that project is going to cost from beginning to end. And if we do it for that money, and we do it on time, and we do a quality job, he's a happy guy. But he would never allow us to do a half a project and then come back and say, we got all these other things going on. So I don't know whether it came from the town level or the direction of your engineering company.
30 seconds, sir.
But you should have had a total project in mind when you put it out to bid, to know what it was going to cost you to get to the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sharon?
Sharon Licata, work about Lane Paulson's Lodge.
There's no light there.
Oh, it's not there.
I'm not even sure it's working, is it?
It doesn't even work?
Take the one off.
I can yell.
Take, you know what, take Brendan.
They can hear
Take
her,
Brendan.
actually, they can hear her in the audience.
They can hear
Take
me?
Brendan.
Yeah, just speak
Oh,
loud.
just, okay, I'll speak loudly. Oh, I can. First, I want to thank Mr. Munter for all of his help in the last few years since I've seen him in these meetings. What he did for Boyhaven and for this community should never be forgotten. And I respect him so much, and I want to thank him for all his help with Boyhaven and with Town Hall. That's my first thing. Secondly, I've just received word that the state of New York, the employees are going back to work, 50%. As a matter of fact, they started yesterday, so CDTA might be picking up some riders now. So they should be aware of that, okay? And that's it.
Thank you, Sharon. Mr. O'Leary?
You spoke about the helicopters issue, but you didn't cover everything. You didn't talk about the National Guards. I read the reply that the commander sent back on the letter that he sent to him. And I learned something that he indicated Saratoga Airport is one about of a dozen that are in use, including fields at Pasico, Ticonderoga, Scroon, Kingston, Great Barrington, Poughkeepsie, and Rome. My question is, why can't we contact them again as a town board and say, look, you've got all these other sites, and I'm sure some of them are less populated in the area, and eliminate the Saratoga Airport site, because we are heavily populated here. I'm a firm believer in asking a question, because otherwise, if you don't ask the question, you don't get an answer. Can you take Saratoga Airport out of your
Flight pattern.
whatever your pattern of what you
Rotation, you
call it?
want to call it a rotation?
I'm sorry?
Call it the rotation, when they go from airport to airport, I think that's called a rotation. We're in a
Flight
rotation
rotation.
with the airports. I will ask him if we can be taken out of the rotation.
And obviously give them the reason why, because you got hundreds of homes around here and hundreds of people are being affected by it. And in the letter that was sent, the response from the school, it indicated in there that the North American has received many, many complaints from the residents. And they say, well, it's not our helicopters, it's the National Guard. So I think that it would have more impact if it went out as a resolution from the entire board as opposed to a request from the supervisor, telling them that because of the heavy population that we have around here, we're going to respectfully request that you eliminate Saratoga County Airport as your training areas. And the other issue, obviously I was totally ignored in my request. I asked the town board under old business to talk about the insurance site,
Yeah.
and yet nobody brings it up. Are we simply going to allow the insurance company to say, no, we're not going to pay the claim and walk away? I gave the town all the information that you need in order to start a lawsuit. I am the expert in the field. I know what I'm talking about. I have sued 3 insurance companies in the past, and I've been successful every time because they denied a claim, they refused to pay it. You take them into court,
30 seconds, John.
and you have, can you just listen to what I have to say, Benny, instead of just tell me how much time I have?
I would love to, sir, but I can't do that. You have 3 minutes, just like everybody else.
It's $40,000 of my money, $40,000 of their money. We need to take it in to an individual that's independent, that is a court, a judge in a court of law. The final denial from the insurance company did not rebut or specifically disagree with any of my analysis that they read. They simply fell back on their initial declaration. Oh, it was a vacant building, and the policy says there's no coverage for a vacant building. They know they're wrong. They're just saying to the town board, up yours, take us to court and prove it. Insurance companies, I told you last time, are not in the business of paying claims. They're in the business of taking premiums and trying to eliminate as many claims as possible. Can the town board at least talk as a body? What are we going to do about that? Are we going to disregard your $40,000? Are you going to disregard what I'm telling you? Are you going to disregard my 11-page analysis? Say something, please. Tell us what we're going to do. Tell us.
Anyone else?
Right here.
Yes, Susan.
I don't need a microphone, trust me. Hi, I'm Suzanne Cannell. I'm at 12 Surrey Lane in Ballston Spa, New York. I'm along, John Olenick and I have been on opposite sides of the bench for a long time. However, I am in favor of what he's saying here also. I've been in the insurance business for 35 years. I do claims. I also teach for Insurance Training Institute, so that all these people that have licenses and producers and insurance agents can continue to have their licenses. I don't understand either why there's no complaint or there's no fight over this insurance denial, because my understanding is that they're denying it because the building was vacant, correct? Is that what it was? And also they were saying that sounded to me like they were saying it was an intentional thing because the heating was off. Well, in most insurance policies, whether it's a commercial policy and or an individual policy, there's no exclusion for stupidity. Now that's the bottom line. And what happened here, as far as I understand and see it, is it was stupidly, the heat was turned off, which caused the pipes to break. So you've got a really good, you get a good statement there, and you can actually go to that insurance company and say, tell me why you're denying this claim when it was not intentional. If it had been intentional and it happened, okay. But if it's an accident, as I said, there's no exclusion for stupidity. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Bugozzi.
Thank you, and Brenda, be aware that you will receive a FOIL tomorrow morning regarding the cost of hooking up to the sewer system that I believe your engineer referred to at $117,000. First, I'm wondering, as a taxpayer, we're paying MJ Engineering, and she referred as the town hooking up to the public sewer system. I'm wondering where that is. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to that answer, because everybody's been telling me it's a private system, and your engineer just got up here and said it's a public system. And I want to know how you can hook up to this system and you don't have a rate. You're not going to take my money and pay an illegal rate. The rate hasn't been set. It's out of time. It's supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. It was last done in 2012. I want to know how many ERUs. They charge $2,000 per ERU. So $117,000, if you want to put an E1 pump in and run that plastic pipe out to their line, maybe you're $30,000, $40,000, not $117,000, but maybe if they have 20 or 30 or 40 ERUs at $2,000, you may be getting up to that range. So I don't know how you're coming up with $117,000. I don't know how you're hooking up to a system that you haven't even set a rate for. You're going to take my money, pay this private sewer company, and you don't even know what the rate is. You don't even know what their cost to build this system is. I appreciate Councilman Frolis's comments, but the first thing that you have to do, and I don't know how I can make this clear to you, is you have to establish what they put in for an investment. I gave a packet to Brenda. I don't direct her. It'd be nice if she gave you all a copy, but I can't compel you to read it, but their tax returns are in there. And in 2010, when you, the board, not some of you, all of you were there, sent the resolution that they had $1.1 million in the ground, on their tax returns, their total assets were listed at $1,258. You're going to need to reconcile that. And then I hear your engineer mention something about going into your new town hall and certain things required by code. I think code's the law. I think that's why they have to meet up with things. Transportation Corporation law is the law. You need to adhere to that too. But it seems that you selectively pick the laws that you want to adhere to. So, as we go on, the way to get the answers to your question, Councilman Froelich, and everybody on this board, you had it in front of you. It was called September 1st. Bring the sewer company here, swear them in under oath, tell the truth, answer our questions under oath truthfully.
30 seconds, sir.
Thank you, and I appreciate the last sentence. Sometimes you need to seek out the jobs that are you best suited for. And I strongly suggest that you go back to your alma mater and apply for the timekeeper's job. They got it at basketball, they got it at wrestling, they got it at all sporting events. You'd be great at it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Come on up, Bruce.
You got a staring contest? What?
Thank you. Just one quick question before I start. Local Law 4, 2021, unsafe abandoned properties and structures. Does that cover our town hall? Couple things, and I want to say thank you, Mr. Froelich, for at least having that discussion. But what I find appalling is we spend more time talking about a $10,000 AV system than we do a sewer system that affects over 1,700 residents in this town. Now that's 1,700 services, so if you take the average home, probably about 2.5 people, 3 people each. So you're talking 4,000 or 5,000 people are affected by this rate. But no one other than Mr. Froelich gives a damn about that. It's okay that they pay extra money, as long as you're not paying it. It's okay if they pay it. It's okay as long as Mr. McNamara is okay, buddy. But what about the citizens in the town that you're supposed to be looking out for their best interest? And the best interest is to send it to Saratoga County where they pay $50 a year versus about $240. That's the best interest. But somehow we can't take 5 minutes to discuss that. It's ridiculous. Maybe I can ask Mr. Craig, where in Transportation Corporation law does it say that the town's engineer reviews the operation and maintenance expense? Let me say the time, because no one's going to answer. It doesn't. So why is MJ? Why are we paying MJ to review the operation and maintenance? That's precisely why you have a rate hearing, so that Heritage comes here and explains why they need to get that money. But, you know, I guess they tell you what to do. You don't, being a regulator, you don't regulate them. They come and they say, go to hell, we're not going to come. And that's okay. Why would anybody listen? Why would anybody listen if they have an abandoned property? Why would they listen to the town board directing them to do something? Because certainly the folks that you are obligated under law to regulate just told you to go to pound salt, and here we are again, floundering about, doing nothing. Mr. Froelich, you're exactly right. The county resolution doesn't even add the words "or all." It simply says they can operate for 6 years to recover some of their money. Some. Don't say all. Don't recoup the cost. It says some of the money. And that is exactly what the intent was. If you go back and look at the law, that's exactly what the intent of Transportation Corporation law is. Let the private companies put the stuff in the ground, and then eventually it goes back to the county or municipality. The questions Mr. Froelich has, and the rest of you should have, is
10 seconds, sir.
Should be answered at a hearing. And my question is, when will we have the rate hearing? When will we set that date? Because if they want to postpone it, that's fine, but we need a date to get these questions answered. And since when does a regulated entity tell this town to you go pound salt, you go to hell. Is that the way we operate here? Because if it is, then I'm gonna do stuff without going to the planning board.
Anyone else?
I
Seeing
guess
none?
I have something to say here. I've listened to John, I've listened to John forever. But with Sue bringing your expertise into this, what can we do about this insurance claim, Jim?
I'll set up a meeting with John tomorrow or Friday. Come in and we'll talk over what your plan is and we'll see what we can do moving forward. How's that sound?
Good. All right.
Thank you, Sue.
Friday I could come in, not tomorrow.
Friday, 1
Morning,
o'clock or so?
afternoon, you name a time.
1 o'clock Friday afternoon? 1 o'clock Friday afternoon?
Okay. In here,
Yes?
obviously, since the other one.
I'm afraid it's gonna have to be next week.
Okay,
Probably anytime next week.
okay. When I can look at my schedule, I'll give you a call. I have your number. Sue, I have your number too. I'll
Yeah.
give you guys a call and we can set something up for next week.
Sure.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
As part of our money, of a $400,000.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Brendan, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Perry.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Salatas.
Yes. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Good night. Lord God bless you.